I'm Chosen Architect, and this is Project Architect 2. Now today is episode 50, and that means it's World Download Day. So if you're a supporter of any tier, be sure to get access to your World Download, all handled over on the Discord. Of course, you can join down below, and if you're a supporter on Twitch, Patreon, here as a YouTube member, make sure to link your account up over on the Discord, and you should also see that World Download channel, where all of the prior World Downloads are also available. So be sure to check that out, and thank you to all of my supporters. Let's get on with today's episode. So yes, today is episode 50, and we've come a long ways in this series, and we are still working our way through what is essentially our final quest line, which leads us into the Beyond Creative, which will then take us into full creative. So how are we going to work on this? Well, today I want to start on some of the tasks, of course, that I feel are going to take a bit of time. Two of those that I want to work on today is going to be the one that involves the chaotic capacitor, and I also want to work on automating the failed potions. Now keep in mind, I still have a creative bin that I have not used yet. So I will take advantage of that, but only after I figure out what exactly should we really be using it on. And in the meantime, what I have done is just to kind of test the waters and try this manually, I have upped the amount of these processors to keep in stock, all up to keeping like 25,000 in stock essentially. And so this is actively crafting all of these individual components while we're working on other things. So I'll kind of see if having that many in stock is even going to put in a dent into what we actually need in the future. So let's head over, since we're going to be working with Draconic, let's head into our Draconic lab. And if we head up here, we're going to see our research facility for our Draconic Evolution stuff. And if you remember from the episode where we automated this, I'm actually using modular routers to pull from a barrel where our applied energistic system sends it, and it's waiting until it receives a product back in order to work. Now, the only thing we have to do whenever we set up a pattern, for example, is we need to take the main product that goes into the middle here, and we just need to add it to this card, this puller card, to make sure it is prevented, it's blacklisted from going into this modular router, and make sure it's whitelisted to where it only gets pulled into this modular router. And that automates this system. And with this setup, we can essentially go and add a ton of different recipes to here, because if we ever need to add a new card, we could just switch this over to a filter card that modular router provides, allowing us to expand this indefinitely. Now, automating what we're about to automate comes with a caveat, and it is very weird, and it's kind of a trial that lets you experience kind of these weird issues that you may have with some auto crafting tasks. And the reason I say this is because each of these capacitors, every time they are crafted, they all have a unique ID, a unique identifier. So each one of these have their own essential kind of UUID that is stored inside of their forge caps, which kind of causes a little bit of problems with applied energistics and how the auto crafters kind of work. And I tried a few different ways to auto craft these, and I have essentially come to the realization that it's not going to be possible to do this, I think, with applied energistics, not successfully. And I even tried redstone locking and all kinds of other fun stuff, and that does not work. So each time I craft one, notice it creates a new one. And that also happens for the Wyvern, and I'm assuming is going to also happen for the Chaotic. So how do we get around this? Well, what I was thinking was that we go ahead and we request 256 of these with the recipes already defined, right? 256, and we kind of get an idea of what we're going to need. So definitely 256 chaos cores, which we can already craft. So 256, and we can start the craft of those, right? It does say we don't have apparently enough coprocessors to do this, which seems kind of ridiculous, but that might be another thing. So let's do 64 times 2. And let's see, do I have enough for that? So I can at least do 128, which will be fine, and I can get my first set started now. But I think this is going to require a bit of manual operations in order to do this. So what I want to do is get those crafted up, and then I'm going to have those ingredients crafted. And I think I'm going to set these to stack mode, and we're going to do them one at a time, essentially. Well, not one at a time, but we are going to start with the low tier, and then we're going to have to find a way to export all of those others and just use a hopper to send it into here one at a time. Now, we are working on something that might allow us to do this with full auto crafting. We do not have it implemented just yet, but the idea is to have some way of removing that unique identifier from these items, and to hopefully prevent the auto crafting from being broken like it is. But we're kind of in the works of seeing if that is going to be possible or not. But for right now, this is going to be a solution to at least get this done. And it is going to take a little bit of time to get these all crafted up. By the way, I wonder, while this is crafting, can I do another set of 128? And let's see, 128. I wonder if this breaks. I wonder if that would break it if I started a new set. Does it break, or is it going to wait until this set is finished? I mean, it should only ever send one recipe pattern at a time. So yeah, I think this is the same as doing the separate ones. We just kind of split it between two CPUs. So beautiful. Like I said, this is going to take some time. So while this is running, what I can go ahead and start working on is the potion brewing. So now I thought I was going to be brewing, but actually this quest is going to be changing, because I originally was under the impression that it was automatable. But, and so was Rick whenever he was putting it together. But unfortunately, after testing, the brewing stand that this is supposed to go into is not automatable, at least on the extraction of the main output, which seems kind of odd that all of the other output slots are extractable. This one is not. So this quest is going to be changing. And I think I found something awesome that is going to change too, that will be even more fun to automate. And it's now going to be Enchanting Breakdown. You can copy enchants, ? And this is going to be making experience goop from Super Factory Manager. Now hold on. There's actually no Factory Manager kind of involved, other than the fact that you need to make experience shards with Super Factory Manager. And to do that, you need to automate the operation of dropping an anvil on an enchanted book on top of obsidian to get these shards. Now, I did the math, and to be able to do this, you would essentially need 2,304 enchanted books. And you know what's really good at generating enchanted books? You guessed it, Industrial Foregoing. So I think this automation is going to be incredibly fun and also incredibly annoying, because dropping anvils makes some noise. So let's get started. Now I want to place this right in the center of the room. I think this is going to be a pretty good place for it. And to do the automation of dropping anvils one block onto a block of obsidian, I'm going to be doing this just like so with modular routers. So we're going to have two stacked modular routers that are going to look like this. And what we want is we want the top one to place the anvil right here in front of it. So we can do that with a placer module, and we set that to the front. If we put a anvil in here, it should place an anvil and drop it immediately one block. That's pretty darn cool in itself. But we can loop this operation in a really fun way by breaking this with a breaker module. By the way, just combine it with, for example, a diamond pickaxe. And this will then break that anvil when it is in front of it. And it puts it in its buffer slot. Now what we need to do with this is send it up back into the router. And once this is done, oh boy, it goes in the bottom one. Once we have this done, it is going to loop the placing of anvils. So yeah, I think I need to change the anvil sound, mostly the land. That's the one that's the most annoying. The break sound, I'm actually kind of getting by. It's really satisfying. And I'll be sure to set the redstone mode. I'll set it to low, for example. And then back here, we should be able to toggle it off. And so it sets like that. When we want to turn it back on, we just turn it back on like so. Beautiful. Actually, now that I think about it, it might be better to have this one, the one that places, be the one that turns off, so that way we don't have the anvil just setting here. Now for the enchanted books, there is a machine from Industrial Foregoing that is called the Enchantment Factory. And so this should be able to generate our enchanted books that we should be able to send into this location here. Now this Enchantment Factory needs a couple things. It needs power, it also needs that liquid experience from Industrial Foregoing, and it needs a book to enchant. So we should be able to feed it books from the back. So simple book from an EMC link should be pretty straightforward. So we'll set that there, and then we'll make sure the input slot is set to pull. So that pulls a book in. That's pretty straightforward. A gate for power, and we'll put in a higher tier gate because I do want to get this upgraded. We'll send that to the side because I don't want to mess with this slot right here because it's going to be kind of important for automation that we're going to be doing. And then we need to send that experience. And the way I want to do that is by simply entangling a setup that we already have in our main base. And so if we go over here where we have our withers, this is actually where things are being stored, right in this. And I think my withers are a little behind. I should probably fix that. There we go. Anyways, so now that we have that entangled block ready to go, I should be able to head back and get that enchantment linked up and get that fluid piping in. So there we go. And that should be, yeah, definitely filling with buckets upon buckets of essence. Beautiful, which is, we're going to need every single bit of it. So the essence is going to be filling in here. And then we need pipe upgrades to make this a bit faster. We want that essence to go in here as fast as possible. And then that's going to enchant a book. So the enchants, I don't think you can kind of adjust. I don't think you can adjust like how good the enchants are. It's going to use 30, I believe, buckets worth of the essence each time it does this operation. So it is going to be expensive on the essence front. So it's going to take 30 buckets, but we are actually generating with our mob farm quite efficiently. So this shouldn't be too bad. Now, the way I want to drop the book is from the face. So I'm going to do this from the front. That is going to be set to push, and we have the world exporters. So I think this will be fast enough, and I'm hoping that with this dropping, it doesn't break anything, and that we can just set it and forget it. So back with more Industrial Foregoing, we will use a world transporter to pull the book out of the slot. Let's make sure, push, pull, set that to open. We shouldn't have to click anything. It should just pull this into the world, which it doesn't seem like it's doing, which is interesting. So since that doesn't work, maybe I can entangle the block and I can set it to auto send out. Like that could definitely work, but it is going to take some trial and error. So essentially what I'll have is a barrel, which will be directly, actually it needs to go up one, right? So we need to have a barrel that is right here. And then this is going to be what has the dropper on it, but we're going to need to pipe the item out, or I guess we could just use this directly and make sure that this is set to push to the bottom. And so whenever we entangle this, that should send that enchanted book out, or so you would hope. Interesting. It wouldn't auto send through the entangled block, but it will let me pull the enchanted books like so. So judging by this with its default speed, we now have the ability for that to work. Okay, so we are getting the books out, and now we should be able to get those sending into the world. And now we can turn on the anvil, and that does produce, yeah, the experience shards. But we kind of got to see, okay, so we notice the enchanted books get kind of bounced around, and we don't want that to happen. So what we can do is we could surround it with some glass potentially, and then we can see how that works, right? At like maintaining and keeping it within that position. Will that work? Aha. It does work. It is a little janky, but that's kind of the magic about this. It is a little bit janky, but we do need a way to collect this. So advanced collector is all we need, and a barrel and a compacting upgrade. And that should be it, I think. Now on the compacting upgrade with the advanced collector, we do want the advanced collector to be filtered to a whitelist and experience shards being the thing that it is picking up. And so it's picking up the experience shards, and then inside of here, we're going to have to switch this mode to compact anything. And so now with the compact anything set, it is now compacting them into experience goop, which is exactly what we need to complete our quest. By the way, experience goop can be used to print and duplicate enchants, utilizing the printing form. Essentially, you take your enchanted book that you want to make a printing form of, place it on a block of iron and drop an anvil on it. And whenever you do that, you will create a printing form for that enchanted book. And then you have to use this experience goop to make that from here. Very interesting. Now, something to note, is this going to use up the durability on the anvil? And from what I've seen so far, an anvil being dropped from a 1 block height doesn't seem like it uses up dura, but I do find this to be a hilarious automation, and I love it. I love it. And it's utilizing several different mods, and I thought this would be something kind of fun to replace that boring potion thing that we had set up here. But this is so much cooler. Now, just to sort of test the waters on this, let's put the max speed upgrades in here and see how that goes. That definitely speeds it up. You know what? This actually isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, especially considering that this can press multiple books at one time. So you could definitely throw in a bunch of books and let it produce. This definitely produces it much faster. And so we only need 256 of these. So give it a little bit of time. This is such a fun little automation to get this done. Now, some other methods for getting enchanted books outside of Industrial Foregoing could be utilizing the enchantment industries from Create. So that would definitely be one other option. As those blazes, whenever they were receiving the experience stuff, can auto enchant books as they go over those blaze burners. And that process looks a little bit like this. You kind of set up your enchantment guide, and then the little blaze burner will do the operations. Kind of interesting little process here, but is definitely a way of just enchanting books based upon the defined thing that you're wanting to enchant. So you use like the lowest tier enchant and just dump them over here because it doesn't matter how high the tier enchant is. Now, while those things are up and running and we now have them working on all of those crafts, it's going to take a little bit of time for example, the Draconic to sort of finish up because it's individual crafts. But while that is actually up and running, let's take a look at one of our other quests. And this is kind of the one that I'm a little concerned about because we are going to need a ton of resources for all of these crafts. Now, most of this stuff, granted, has EMC, but the withering processors, for example, these require crafts and operations to be done in order for it to be completed, and requires nether stars. Now, the nether stars we have, that is pretty straightforward, and we should have plenty, and I mean a plenty of nether stars, for example, in here. But what becomes the pain is actually setting up all of the recipes for this, and also all of the things that need to be smelted for each of these. Now, these are from extra discs, but if we were to, for example, start a crafting pattern, you can notice that sometimes it may flip-flop on certain things, depending on like what we're working on. Like I think there's a fluid disc that might go between different ones. We just got to make sure that we are working towards and pulling from the ones that are from the extra disc mod. So the best bet is to start from the highest tier and then just start working our way down, making sure that these say extra discs and we do not have substitutions enabled. So already whenever I was stepping down into this tier, it had happened. This is from extra storage, and we got to make sure that we're not using the ones from this. I mean, it may not honestly matter all that much, but we do want to keep some consistency to make sure that we are crafting the correct components each time. They will work, they should work if they're intertwined, but I do want to make sure that I'm going with this one, for example. So like this right here, I want to make sure it's using the ones from extra disk. So I will have to drag these in to make sure that is the one that is directly pulling from. And same goes for this one, right? This is the next tier component and they all look the same, but because there's a couple of mods in here that do add the similar extra discs that you can see here. Honestly, I should go in and maybe that will happen. It's really hard to remove something like that after an update because if you publish this with that already in there, if anybody already had automation set up for those discs, me pulling that or making that disappear from JEI would, you know, mess with people's stuff. And I don't really want to do that. So I am going to be leaving that in here, I think, for right now. But man, in the future, I will definitely make sure in another mod pack, if I make it, I will make sure to have that removed because this is kind of tedious going through each individual one. Now, just to put this in perspective, just for the actual parts themselves, this is all the recipes for it. This isn't even accounting for all of the processing recipes that we actually have to make. and also all of the recipes for base refined storage. But I do want to use this to kind of gauge how crazy this is going to be, because we are going to probably need to get certain things prepped up. For example, like silicon, which is going to be needed in a ton. Like we're going to need a ton of silicon to be able to craft all of these. Now, some tips when building out these recipes: make sure if they are processing recipes, you throw them inside of your pattern multiplier or your the pattern modifier, and you send these to at least 64. So they do a process operation of 64, and there we go. Now, I might end up needing a pattern provider for each rainbow furnace. I'm kind of figuring out how much we're actually going to need for this. But there we go. I now have all of these inside crafters. And so now we should be able to kind of get an estimate by this storage component. So there is an infinite storage part, just one of them, by the way. And it looks like we are encountering a issue in here for the extra disk one. So yeah, I've got to kind of figure this out. And this actually might have just been a case of me missing this recipe, because I don't see it actually in the list. So yeah, I think I just actually missed this one. So now this might get us a good calculation. Next, and it says everything is available. And just to put it in perspective, this is just one of them. Now it says right here, we do not have the storage available. So I think I would need one of the mega components, which I need to probably craft up to be able to do this. But noticing here, yeah, 708,000 silicon would need to be available, and also here. So a couple of components that might be worth getting processed right away is all of the processors and having those automatically done. And then also making sure I have silicon available. And then that would probably speed up this craft significantly. And so I think this is where those mega crafting storages are going to really come into play. For example, this is a 1 mil. So if I have the 1 mil component, which I think I do, we can go ahead and put this in. And so this is going to take one of our mega cells. So I should be able to send that and then make this one. And between these two, this might be enough. But if not, we can go ahead and craft one and replace one. And then we'll see what this looks like. But I got to put it in here and see if this is actually going to be enough. So I'll break this. Actually, I don't know which one is actually working on the operation. Let's just break this one for right now. And then we'll replace it with this. And so now we have a 1 million mega where we had a 256. That's a significant jump there. Device is online. Okay. And then let's try now with the infinite storage component. Okay, so it still says there's not a crafting CPUs available. So yes, that's because it requires over 6 million bytes to do this operation. So I think we would need at least a higher tier one from the Mega Cells mod. So at the moment, I'm crafting up a 16 million component, and this should be enough. It's over 6 million in bytes, and I'm assuming it's based off of all bytes on that information. So with that, that's actually a pretty huge craft that we crafted up pretty quickly. Now I'm going to go ahead and swap this, and let's see if one now will be able to work. Network is booting. Let it get to online. Nice. And infinite storage part. Now will I have an available CPU for this? There we go. So now that we have that, we can now actually start this request. But I will say that starting this, it's going to take a long time for it to process. So yeah, notice it is running through it. It is going pretty quickly, but it's just not going to be fast enough. I think what we will have to end up doing, just kind of get a taste of what this is going to be like, we are going to need to have these non-stop running. Also, they're probably going to need to be on a different setup. And I'm thinking that if we were to send them like this, like that's perfectly reasonable. But we are going to have an interface on the back with a pipe that's pulling out, keeping that loop going incredibly fast. Like, for example, something like this. So I know my cables are all kind of jankified over here, but we can speed this up, I think, significantly. For example, let's do pipe and then the infinity pipe upgrades on the back of here temporarily. And this should speed this up significantly with the autocrafters, because the injection's not the actual issue. it's at how fast this can actually pull this stuff out. So we want to make sure the back is an output, and now you can see it is going incredibly fast. And same will have to be for this side. And so now, you know what? Now this is actually climbing and going pretty fast. But like I said, having those in stock would make this just a simple crafting operation. So I plan on getting at least these up and running, which is going to be processing very, very quickly. And I have them going into a drawer that has a max storage upgrade. And then we can connect directly into this. And we could just utilize a storage bus, and then this should be able to recognize it. Because I don't want to spend like 30 minutes just waiting for a singular furnace to kind of operate. Instead, we could just have this constantly running. And before we know it, we'll have all the resources we'll ever need for these crafts. And I should be able to get away with just slapping a upgrade on here and making sure that top and output on the bottom. And that should be all we need, I think. Let's make sure we have that. That is set to quartz. And quartz did go in, interestingly enough, but it's not being processed. I'm so confused now. What is this doing? Oh, interesting. So the nether quartz cannot work with the blasting upgrade. So that's why that was super confusing, is because of the actual blasting upgrade. Interesting. So I'm surprised this is all working. This has a blasting upgrade. This also does. Oh, so as soon as I apply that, then it all starts processing. Oh boy. That was a whoopsie. Now I've come up with this solution, right, where we have these items and they are connected to the system, but this is my monstrosity that is essentially going to be making all of the processors. So let me try my best to explain, because I know I set all of this up, but essentially we have our base 2 products, our string and our slime balls, and I have 3 separate processes that are happening here to hopefully craft and then send that to this setup. Now, I still have a little bit more to configure, but I have all of the 3 slots here ready to go for all of these individual items that are going to be required here. All we have to do is get the items. For example, I need iron, and then I'm also going to need gold. I'm going to need some silicon, and I'm also going to need diamonds. And then we'll supply that with this over here. And this should auto pull these ingredients. And of course, we're going to make sure to set that to a stack, so it will be constantly supplied. Beautiful. So that is then going to pull, and this is also pulling redstone. So that has EMC, so that gets pulled out. And then the processor binding are being crafted right here. And that all gets sent into all 3 of these machines, which should be set up to automatically start receiving and crafting up the components that then get immediately smelted and then get stored with our infinite storage upgrades. And then the goal is to connect all of these into our main storage so we have them always online. This is a little overkill, but all I have to do now is add the upgrades. So this, and then this thing is really going to jumpstart. This is going to go pretty darn fast. And I don't even know if the infinity upgrades need to be here, but you can see these are now filling up, and that's because we have to, of course, get the items smelted and sent out. And this is really going to ramp up. This is going to be the last ones that are going to pull out. And I think there we go. And you know what? We might not even need all of these infinity pipe upgrades. I think we might get by with at least these. Honestly, this whole setup could probably run off of the high tier. Aside from this one, this probably needs the infinity ones. Now, I know that these aren't running super, super fast. We're only filling up 1 stack, but what we can do is make simultaneous crafts. So we can do this exact same craft here, and I can make sure to add that. And now we're going to have 2 that are running. And so you can see this, by adding more of the same recipe, we do speed this up. And so now, just for the overkill, I have this entire thing filled with all processing of these crafts. And you can see we are keeping up. I did have to upgrade this with an infinity, this with an infinity, and this with an infinity, but these seem to be keeping up with just the ultimate pipe upgrades, which is great. Keeping this constantly stocked and filled. And this is now making a ton of our processors, which we're going to need, because just for one requires like so much. Like this hasn't even finished crafting yet in the time that I've gotten all this set up, just due to the amount of raw processors that have to be made. It is a lot. So having these up and running and just being ready to go is going to save us a ton of time. So now after setting up that madness, I am back to this because it is now actually finished, and I am now slowly but surely adding all of these injectors to these entangled blocks. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to send items to this by hand. Because we will not be able to use the whole auto crafting feature, so it kind of limits how I'm going to be doing this, but I should be able to get all of them in like this, giving me a little bit more flexibility so I can place the items in and we can automate that way. So now with all of these blocks entangled, I should be able to at least get started making all of the Wyvern capacitors. Now, I ended up using these barrels because we need 256 of these, and these hold like 137, I think. It's like 12 times 11 inside of one. So if it's split between two, we can then pick these up by taping them, and we can move them up here for our next crafting operation. So for example, for this, I'm going to need Draconium. So I do a request for Draconium, and I'm going to be like 4. Let's see, we need 4 times 256. And we can go ahead and get those crafted up. Because we had none, we should be able to evenly split this into 4 sections of 256. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can place this into here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is how I'm going to go about doing this. So just some nice helpful tips for getting these ingredients in. And is this going to insert? So it should, as soon as we do this, and this, and you can see the items have gone in here. Beautiful. Or at least for one of them it has. One has because, yeah, I gotta get the items going in the correct direction. There we go. Now, before I fully turn this on, I just want to make sure that on our sender here, we actually disable this. So we can disable this modular router sender by just simply pulling out the puller upgrade and making sure that this is actually what pulls the final product out. And so if all is well, we should be able to place our Wyvern cores into the top. That should start that. And just need to make sure we got everything else situated. That should be pulling those out. Those are inserted. These I did not turn on. So there we go. Now with that, you can see it is going to start. And what we should notice is all of these being unstacked inside of the setup here. So there's 1, 2 should be crafting now. And you notice they do not stack. So that's something we've got to deal with. And so it leads to interesting automations like this. So now while that's processing up, I am going to need to request 256 of these Draconic cores. And thankfully we're not blocking that one up. That is going to happen over here. And that'll allow us to get the crafts for the next setup. Because I also needed all of those chaos cores. So we do have our chaos cores nice and stored up, which is great, 256 of those. And now we need 256 of these. So this should all be done by the next episode. But of course, you guys are going to be downloading this world. This stuff should for the most part be done or in mid-craft in world download. So it'll be something you can kind of toy around with and play with in the world download. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. A lot of work went into today's episode, and I hope you did enjoy. Be sure to download the world if you're a supporter of any tier. Of course, you gain access to that, like I said at the beginning of the video, over on the Discord. A lot of stuff in this world. This world is sprawling with adventure, so I definitely recommend downloading it and checking it out for yourself. So, thank you all. I think it's time now to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Evilo's Maker. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. You guys mean the world to me, and I thank you so very much. And of course, guys, I thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And of course, because I can't help myself, I'm going to thank you once again. As always, thanks for watching. Bye!